My name's Adam. I turned 43 last month. I work in IT, nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills, keeps the lights on, and has afforded us a decent home in the suburbs of Colorado. I've always been the guy behind the scenes, quiet, dependable, the one making sure the mortgage gets paid, the groceries appear in the fridge, and the oil in everyone's cars gets changed before they even realize it's due. I'm not flashy. I don't throw big parties. I don't post every coffee I drink on social media. But I always show up for my wife, for our daughter, and for my family, even when they didn't always do the same for me. This year, though, something felt different. For weeks leading up to my birthday, everyone was acting weird. My wife, Melissa, kept giving me this sly, knowing smile every time we talked about the weekend. Don't make any plans, she told me. This year's going to be special. Our daughter, Clara, she's 17, kept giggling every time I walked into the room. You're gonna love it, Dad, she said one night, barely able to contain herself. It's a big surprise. Even my brother Jacob, who usually forgets my birthday until I remind him, texted me out of the blue. Hope you're ready, old man. I didn't know what to make of it, but I let myself feel something I hadn't felt in a while, anticipation. So I cleared my schedule. I turned down a client call that Friday and told my boss I was unavailable all weekend. On the morning of my birthday, I even put on the blue button-down Melissa always says she likes, ironed it, and everything. I made coffee, fed the dog, and waited. And waited. By noon, the house was still quiet. No one had said anything. Melissa's car wasn't in the driveway, but I figured maybe she ran out to grab something for the surprise. Clara's door was shut, and I didn't want to ruin anything by snooping. So I waited some more. By 2 p.m., I started to feel off. I texted Melissa, hey, all good. No reply. Texted Clara, everything okay, kiddo? Nothing. I chalked it up to them being busy, maybe caught up in last-minute prep. By 4 p.m., I was sitting in the kitchen, staring at the cold cup of coffee I'd reheated twice already. I opened the fridge. Nothing new. No cake. No beer. Not even a card on the counter. It wasn't just the silence. It was the kind of silence that wraps around you, presses into your ribs, and whispers something you don't want to hear. I told myself not to be dramatic. Maybe they were running late. Maybe they'd show up yelling surprise any minute. Maybe they were stalling to throw me off. But then, around 6 p.m., I opened Instagram. The first thing I saw was Clara's story. A boomerang of a fireplace, cozy and crackling. Then a group selfie. Melissa, Clara, my brother Jacob, and his wife. All of them huddled on a couch, grinning with marshmallows and cocoa. The caption, birthday weekend cabin getaway. Party Popper Mountain # family time. I blinked. Scrolled. Another post, this one from Jacob. A photo of the cabin porch, snow dusted on the railing. His caption read, glad we left the grump behind. Now it's a real party. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen for a full minute before locking my phone and setting it down. The silence in the house had changed. It was no longer expectant. It was final, like it had always been there, waiting for me to notice. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or throw my phone across the room. I just sat there, numb. My birthday dinner was leftover meatloaf and a half-eaten bag of sour cream chips. The candles on the table were burned-out stubs from 2 weeks ago. No one came home that night. The next day, I went to work like nothing had happened. No one asked me how the big surprise went. No one really knew or cared. I answered tickets, fixed someone's printer, ate lunch in the break room, and drove home in silence. The house was still empty. Day 2 was when something in me cracked. I'm not a vindictive man. At least, I never saw myself as one. But there's something about being erased on your birthday that shifts your perspective. There's something about watching your wife, your child, and your brother, all people you've moved mountains for, laugh in real time while you sit forgotten in your own house. Something about reading, glad we left the grump behind, like you're the punchline to a joke you didn't know you were in. So I opened my laptop, logged into the accounts they forgot I still controlled. Electric? In my name. Wi-Fi? Me. The joint credit card Melissa used for groceries, gas, and this little weekend getaway? Yep, mine too. I didn't do anything rash. Not right away. I sat with it first. Let it simmer. That night, the lights flickered once, then went out completely. I sat on the couch with a beer, surrounded by the faint glow of the last bit of sunset, and waited. My phone buzzed around 9 p.m. A text from Melissa. Hey, weird question. Is the power out at the house? We just got an alert. I didn't reply. Next morning, Clara messaged me on Snapchat because of course she didn't want a real trail. Dad, something's wrong with the card. We couldn't get gas for the drive back. Again, I said nothing. And by noon, the missed calls started coming in, one after another. Melissa, Clara, even Jacob, who hadn't called me in over a year. I let them ring. And then, around 2 p.m. that Sunday, my front door creaked open. I didn't jump up. I didn't pretend to be caught off guard. I was exactly where I wanted to be, sitting in the living room, phone in hand, reading quietly while the natural light spilled through the blinds. Melissa's heels clicked on the hardwood before she appeared in the doorway, cheeks pink from the cold and her mouth already half-formed in apology. Adam, she started, sounding breathless like she'd just sprinted from the driveway. I don't know what happened. The power, Clara's freezing. We had to cut the weekend short, and the card wouldn't work, and I looked at her. Calmly. You mean the card I pay off every month? Her eyes flickered. Yes, but I thought you. I what? I asked, setting my phone down with a slow, deliberate motion. I thought I'd sit here while my wife and daughter and brother all ran off for a secret trip and left me sitting in an empty house on my birthday? She looked around like she was hoping someone would walk in and tell her this was a prank. It wasn't like that. We didn't think you'd enjoy it. Then why lie? I asked. Why tell me to take the day off work? Why let me sit here thinking I was finally going to have a birthday that meant something? Melissa's voice cracked. Clara planned it with Jacob's wife. She thought it'd be better, more relaxing. You've been so tense lately, with work and… I stood. That stopped her mid-sentence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Don't blame the teenager. Don't pin this on Clara like you weren't grinning in those cabin photos. Like you didn't know exactly what you were doing when you left me here. She looked down. We just wanted a break. No, I said, heart thudding, not from anger, but from something clearer. You wanted me to be the break. Something you could set aside. Just then, Clara stepped into the doorway behind her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She looked scared. Dad, she said, voice soft. I turned to her. Clara, did you know I was here? Did you know I was waiting all day? She hesitated. I thought you knew. Uncle Jacob said you didn't want to come, that you were too tired and you didn't like trips. Mom said it was better to surprise you when we got back. I nodded, slowly. So that was the story they fed her. She looked down at her phone. But then I saw your comment. The one you didn't leave. What? You saw the photos, but you didn't comment. You always leave something. A joke or a smile. This time, nothing. That's when I knew we messed up. There was a moment of silence between the three of us. Just air and shame and regret hanging thick in the room. Melissa took a step closer. Adam, I'm sorry. We can fix this. No, I said, cutting her off. I can fix this. Her brows furrowed. What does that mean? I walked to the foyer and opened the front door. You've got your bags in the car, right? You came straight here from the cabin. She nodded, hesitating. Good, I said. Then you don't need to unpack. She blinked. You're kicking us out. No, I said. You left. I'm just making it official. Clara looked between us, stunned. Wait, Dad. I looked at her and my voice softened, but my words didn't. You made a choice, kiddo. And choices come with consequences. That's something you'll need to understand now. Melissa's face hardened. You can't be serious. Over one birthday. One birthday. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Try every birthday. Every time I took a back seat. Every time I made excuses for being forgotten. Every time I swallowed the hurt because I thought maybe next year would be different. She stepped forward again, but I backed away. I turned off the power. I canceled the cards. Because I needed you to feel for one weekend what I've felt for years. Invisible. Unwanted. Optional. Melissa was silent. Clara looked at me, her eyes shining. Where am I supposed to go? Your uncle seems to think I'm a grump, I said coldly. Maybe he'll offer you a couch. Melissa opened her mouth again, but I cut her off with a single raised hand. I'm done, Melissa. You don't get to spin this. You don't get to call this a mistake and sweep it under the rug until next year. You forgot me. Willfully. Publicly. Gleefully. And now you're going to remember that decision every time you hit a wall that used to be me. She stood there, frozen. Then, wordlessly, she turned and walked out the door, Clara trailing behind her with a shaken look. The wind howled outside as they stepped into the cold. I closed the door. Locked it. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was restless or regretting anything. I just didn't want to. For the first time in a long time, the silence in the house wasn't suffocating. It was cleansing. No muffled laughter from the hallway that didn't include me. No midnight whispering behind a closed door. No pretending that being left out didn't hurt. I sat on the couch, legs up, a throw blanket over me, sipping whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion that never came. Now, it felt appropriate. It wasn't a toast to revenge. It was a quiet celebration of remembering myself. Remembering that I didn't have to keep being the safety net for people who treated me like a spare tire. By morning, the real fallout began. First came the texts. Clara again. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know they were lying. I swear. Can we talk? Then Melissa. We need to come back and figure this out. Clara needs stability. We all do. I ignored them. 10 minutes later, a call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. She never called me on my birthday either, by the way, just commented on my wife's Facebook post, like that counted. The voicemail was exactly what I expected. Adam, I heard what happened. Melissa and Clara are beside themselves. This isn't like you. Please be reasonable. Don't make things harder than they need to be. Reasonable. That word. Always the weapon of choice when people want to guilt you back into your old role. Quiet, compliant, cooperative. Funny how nobody wanted to be reasonable when they were playing charades in a cabin and tagging everyone but me. Around noon, Jacob finally called. That one I picked up. His voice was all fake cheer. Bro, sounds like things got a little tense. Listen, I didn't mean that comment about the grump, just joking around. You know how it is. You didn't mean it? I said flatly. Nah, of course not. Come on. We all needed a breather, man. Thought you'd enjoy the house to yourself. I mean, we figured you'd rather be alone. Ah, I said. So now you're psychic. Because I certainly don't remember telling anyone that. He paused. Okay. Maybe it was a miscommunication. Look, they're upset. Just turn the power back on. What's done is done. What's done is not done, I said calmly. It's only just beginning. What's that supposed to mean? I gave all of you my time, my money, my patience, and you gave me silence. So now I'm giving you the same. You'll figure it out. He started to raise his voice. Adam, don't drag this out just to prove a point. You're acting like the grump you left behind. I finished for him. Click. I didn't even feel angry. Just aware. Aware of how long I'd been asleep at the wheel of my own life. Aware of how easily people grew used to you being their fallback. How comfortable Melissa had gotten using my credit without thinking about where it came from. How often Clara called me only when she needed a ride or a signature. How Jacob only called when he needed help moving a fridge or bailing out of a parking ticket. The pattern had been there. I just hadn't been ready to see it. But now I was. Later that day, Melissa came back. Not to move back in. No, she wasn't that bold, but to plead. She rang the doorbell 3 times, then knocked. I didn't answer. I watched from the upstairs window as she stood on the porch, coat pulled tight around her, lips moving like she was rehearsing what she'd say if I opened the door. Then I saw her take out her phone. A few seconds later, it buzzed on the counter downstairs. Her voice, in my voicemail again. Adam, I don't know how we got here. I know I hurt you. We all did. But please don't shut me out like this. Not forever. I didn't listen to the rest. Instead, I walked back into the bedroom, the one I'd cleaned up after they left, and sat down at my desk. Opened my computer. Pulled up the family trust account. Another thing they forgot I had access to. Clara's college fund. Under my name. Her car insurance. On my policy. The cabin rental. Charged to the emergency travel card I'd opened 2 years ago during a storm when Clara got stranded after a music festival. It was all in my hands. And now I had decisions to make. I didn't want revenge for the sake of cruelty. I didn't want to see them suffer for sport. But I wanted something else now, something I hadn't wanted before. Accountability. Real, unmistakable consequences. Not the kind you whine about in group chats or sweep under an "I'm sorry." The kind that lingers. That teaches. That makes sure the next time someone starts planning a weekend escape, they remember who turned the lights off last time. And as I looked at the numbers, the account balances, and the auto-pay schedules, one thing became very clear. They weren't the only ones who could plan something special. But this time, it wouldn't be a surprise for me. It would be a surprise for me. And the best part? They wouldn't see it coming. It took me 3 days to make the full list. I didn't rush it. I took my time. Sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and wrote everything down. Every bill, every auto payment, every subscription, every account that had my name on it. Everything that made their lives comfortable without them even realizing it. They'd grown so used to the background hum of stability that they forgot it had a source. Me. Melissa hadn't worked full-time in years. After Clara was born, she said she wanted to stay home, just until kindergarten. Then it was, just until Clara's in middle school. Then, I'll pick up hours at the boutique, which turned into 2 shifts a month at a place that mostly paid in store credit. Clara had never paid for gas, insurance, or even her own phone bill. She was a good kid, smart, headstrong, but she'd inherited something dangerous, Melissa's quiet sense of entitlement. And Jacob? He was a parasite in khakis and cologne, always showing up with a favor to ask and never once offering one in return. But they weren't just freeloaders. They were confident freeloaders. They believed I would always show up, always forgive, always stay quiet, because I always had. So I decided to stop. I closed the emergency credit account first. That was the card they used for the cabin rental. Melissa had added it to her Apple Pay years ago and clearly forgot it was in my name. One call and a signature later, the payment bounced. I didn't even have to say a word. That night, I got a notification. Transaction declined at Mountain Pines Lodge. Reason: card closed. The next morning, I froze the college fund, not drained it, just locked access. Clara's tuition hadn't been billed yet, but the fund had been used as collateral for her upcoming dorm reservation and financial aid verification. She'd applied to out-of-state schools without even asking me how we'd afford it. She'd assumed, like her mother, that I would make it work. That same day, I scheduled a termination for every shared streaming account: Netflix, Disney+, Spotify Family Plan, you name it. Not out of spite, but because I didn't want them watching movies in comfort while I picked up the pieces alone. I didn't leave it at that, though. I mailed Melissa a certified envelope. Inside was a printed spreadsheet, color-coded, itemized, and brutally specific. Every single expense I'd covered in the past 3 years: groceries, gas, utilities, Clara's car repairs, Jacob's surprise bail money, her last spa day, with the receipt I found months ago. And at the bottom, a termination notice for our joint checking account, a separation of assets draft, courtesy of my friend at work whose brother is a lawyer, and a note that simply read, "Forgotten things tend to fade, but debts? They stick around." The response came faster than I expected. Melissa called the next afternoon, frantic. I didn't answer. Then she showed up, again, banging on the door this time, shouting through the locked wood like I'd kidnapped her child and robbed her bank. I stood behind the curtain, watching. She didn't look contrite. She looked panicked. "Adam," she cried, voice hoarse. "You're overreacting. This is insane. You're punishing Clara. Think about her." "Ah, yes. When all else fails, invoke the child." So I texted Clara. Just one message. "You want to talk? We'll talk. Just you. No lies, no games. At the park. Tomorrow. 4 p.m. She agreed. When I arrived at the park, Clara was already on the bench, bundled in a hoodie and jeans, her hair pulled back in a loose braid like she used to wear it when she was little. She looked up as I approached, and for a second, I saw a flicker of that little girl. The one who used to crawl onto my lap and beg me to read The Velveteen Rabbit for the 1,000th time. Then she said, "Are you really cutting me off?" I sat beside her, let the question hang in the air for a moment. "I'm giving you a chance to take responsibility," I said. "There's a difference." She looked away, jaw tight. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Dad." "I believe you," I said. "But that doesn't change what happened. You left me on my birthday. All of you. And you didn't think twice." She swallowed. "Uncle Jacob said you'd be weird about the trip, that you'd make it awkward." I nodded. "And what did you say?" "I didn't say anything," she whispered. "Exactly," I said. That silence was a choice. Clara's eyes welled up. "I just wanted to have fun. I thought you'd understand." "I do," I said. "I understand perfectly. You wanted fun, and I was the price." We sat in silence for a while, the winter wind brushing leaves along the concrete. "I locked the college fund," I said. "Not to hurt you. To give you a reason to talk to me, really talk. Because I'm not going to be your invisible wallet anymore." She didn't respond, but she nodded, slowly, like someone finally realizing the weight of a consequence. I stood. "You want my help for college, I'll still give it. But there are going to be terms this time. Real ones. You want to be treated like an adult? Then act like one." I paused. "And you can tell your mom. The house will be sold this spring." I've already contacted a realtor. Clara's head whipped around. You're selling the house? Yes, I said. I'm done living in a museum of someone else's comfort. I'm moving on. The final blow came 2 weeks later. Melissa's car, technically my car, leased under my name, was repossessed after I canceled the lease agreement. She'd already missed a payment I'd reminded her about months ago. I let it lapse, then let the bank do their job. She called me sobbing. Clara's ride to school is gone. What am I supposed to do? I replied evenly. Ask Jacob. He seems to know what I like and don't like. Then I hung up. Today, it's been 1 month since my birthday. The power in the house is on again because I paid for it, not because someone begged. The guest room that used to hold Jacob's luggage during his unexpected visits has been turned into a home office. I sleep better. I eat what I like. I listen to my music, not what Melissa tolerated. I have dinner with Clara every other Thursday now. It's awkward sometimes, but she shows up. She asks questions. She listens. And she's starting to learn who I am beyond the guy who drove her to violin lessons and paid for her cracked iPhone screen. Melissa? She's staying with her sister. Jacob? No clue. No contact. No interest. And me? I'm not bitter. I'm awake. It took being forgotten to remember my worth. It took silence to realize the only voice I really needed to hear again was my own. And now, every morning when I flip the lights on in my house, I remember. They didn't turn them off. I did. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.